house, and if any Indian tries to stop me, I'll blast him.
You know, the only thing more pathetic than Indians on TV is Indians watching Indians on TV.
Hey everybody, it's Ian back again for another episode of Native Film Talk. Back to our regularly scheduled programming. Feels good, right? Not to be doing interviews for a while? Just kidding. I love doing interviews. I love meeting new people, new individuals who are in the film industry or are part of the film industry in some different capacity. I have a few interviews lined up in the next couple of weeks with some podcasters, other native podcasters, but also with some people who are in the film industry. A couple on the theater actor side and another who is a costume designer. And I can't wait. That's the one I'm most excited for. But today, we're talking about the quick and the dead. Quick and the dead. Man, I love this movie. Just straight up, I haven't seen this movie in years. I saw this as a kid, and I really enjoyed it. And I'll talk a little bit about later why, but let's just jump into the quick facts. Directed by Sam Raimi. Yeah, that Sam Raimi. When I saw that, I was just like, really? I forgot. I mean, not this time, but probably 5-10 years ago, I must have looked it up, and I'm like, Sam Raimi? I rewatched it, and I'm like, holy crap, that's amazing. Real quick, rank the top 5 Sam Raimi movies in your mind. What I noticed, what I learned, everybody's list is different. I think you could say that about any director, that like there's no definitive list. But with Sam Raimi, like the lists are all over the place. So my top 5, Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man, The Quick and the Dead, Evil Dead 2, Evil Dead, honorable mention, Army of Darkness. Easily. The laughing deer scene's iconic. Evil Dead just has its place in horror history, cult history, and Spider-Man 2 was the shit. Easily best Spider-Man movie of all time. Thus far, anyway. Come at me. So Sam Raimi, his movies are all over the place, and he was fresh off of Army of Darkness when this movie started. And Sharon Stone was really involved with the producing and making sure this movie was created all together and getting the cast. I'll go over the cast. This movie feels like it's made in an alternate universe because, one, it's a spoof of a Western in a time where people were trying to reinvent the Western, but it's a spoof on the entire Western genre, and it's just hyperbole all over the place, which is awesome. But the cast is legendary. Like, this is the best alternate universe. Wherever this universe is where this movie was made and somehow graced us with their presence, when I go over the cast review, it'll blow your mind. One thing about Sam Raimi real quick, there's another movie that's probably going to be added to my top 5. I've never seen Drag Me to Hell. Never seen it. But from what I heard, it's probably going to unseat one of those in the top 5 and probably be in the top 5. But man, this movie, I loved it because it wasn't a traditional Western. I hated Westerns growing up. Hated. Just like I hated country music. Because on the res, growing up in the early 90s, mid 90s, we were in a time capsule. We were like frozen in time. The stuff that we had was older. Like old. Like if you grew up on a res, you know what I mean. If you grew up in a rural community, in a lower SES community, you know what I mean. Like you just kind of are like just behind the times. And so that's why like I grew up on movies like Karate Kid and Bloodsport and stuff, and I had a VHS player. I had a VCR and VHS like galore for the longest time, and didn't have dial-up until, like the early 2000s kind of thing. So, I mean, it lended for a unique experience, but why I bring that up is when it comes to music, they love them some Waylon Jennings, some Hank Williams, and they love John Wayne, at least in my house. And when I would watch The Quick and the Dead, even Unforgiven, that had Clint Eastwood in it, and that had Gene Hackman, who was also in it. But like the new age of the new Western, Like it was starting to reimagine itself of what the modern Western was going to look like. Tombstone had just come out prior to this movie. And so they were trying to remake the old Westerns, but also still keep it relevant. And so when The Quick and the Dead came along, it was way different. And it was fun. It was like a comic for me. It was like a comic book. That's what this movie reminded me of. And my family did not like this movie. My uncle did because he was 11 years older than me. So he was like basically my older brother and we grew up in the same house. And that's how I saw this movie, and I fucking loved this movie because it was way different than the Westerns that I grew up on. And there are people that don't like this because they just didn't get it. Like, it just went over their heads that it was a spoof, that it was kind of just a homage, like an homage while making fun of itself, you know? Like, this ain't my kind of Western. I like my Westerns like my country music, old and depressing. You know, I want some John Wayne, Waylon Jennings, Hank Williams. Where's my MAGA hat? I'm just kidding. So that was awful for all kinds of reasons. But no. I really think that if you didn't get it, you know, I encourage you to go watch this movie again. This movie is freaking awesome. Highly encourage it. I mean, this has, let me give you some real quick examples. If you haven't seen it in a long time, it pokes fun at itself. Because you have the nameless cowboy that rides in the town with no name, Lady. You got the guy who sleeps on a bed of dynamite, Leonardo DiCaprio's character. The man who swears to never kill again, Court, but has to be forced into being killed again. The lone villain controlling a town simply by fear, whether it's greed or money or his power, his prowess. You know, that's freaking Herod. You got gunslingers coming all across it, like funneling into this town that has no importance at all. There is no metropolis in this town. Redemption, where this town is, it's a nothing town. It's not even on the way to something. It's just in the way, but gunslingers all make their way through it because of Herod. And you can think of so many Western, while I didn't like Westerns growing up, I saw way too many of them. So I saw so many of the Western, like, movies in my head. I'm just like, oh, yep, that was that movie. Yep, I remember seeing that. So it was pretty cool. But then the characters, like you have the character that escapes from jail, you have Scars, you have the character that is like the hired gun, kind of like Magnificent Seven, that's brought in to take out Herod, who is Keith David. You have Spotted Horse, who is supposed to be like Geronimo, and that's why I'm doing this. You know, Native Film Talk, I want to talk about Spotted Horse in this. Can't be killed by a bullet. You know, the legend was that Geronimo was like 50 Cent. Couldn't be killed by a gun. You know, like he had just bullets galore. And in the movie, Spotted Horse like rips open his shirt and he's like, hey, look at all these bullet holes. I can't be killed. You know, no white man can kill me with a bullet kind of thing. And, you know, real quick thing over at Spotted Horse, name checks out. It's not something that's just made up. Like I looked up Spotted Horse. There were some legends of Spotted Horse, the origin names of Spotted Horse. Obviously, this is just online, but it sounds like it's a real name. I bring that up because sometimes they would just make up wild ass names in cinema, like in Wild Eagle from the old TV show F Troop, Crazy Bear. They were just dancing something, you know. They would just go to like a random native name generator and just type in something, and it would be like, oh, it flies into the west. Your name is now Flies with the Eagles, and I'm sure that's a real native name, but it doesn't come from a genuine place. It may or may not be. You know, like I think that's where I think non-native people just kind of run with their idea of what native culture is. But in this case, Spotted Horse seems like the name checks out, so pretty cool. Jonothon Gill is a Lakota individual. He didn't have a whole lot of acting roles outside of this one that were prominent. Like, this is his most prominent role, unfortunately. I say unfortunately because I wanted to see him in more stuff. This was pretty cool. But yeah, you know, it was real funny is their whole trope in this was like, you know, Geronimo couldn't be killed by any bullet. And there's always like this running joke, especially in smoke signals, like Geronimo is Apache, how Apaches are always real short. The truth is, Geronimo is probably on that odd job status, you know? If you've ever played GoldenEye, Nintendo 64, odd job was impossible to kill because he was so damn short. It gave him such an advantage over the rest of the field. Unpopular opinion, but just throwing that out there. I think one of the coolest things about this is like it blends Bloodsport with brackets, with bracketology. I think now, like, we love brackets. March Madness rolls around, we're a sucker for brackets. And this is a bracket movie. Like, there's 16 people roll into town trying to take down the big bad boss, Herod, and they go after it. Single elimination. The rules change. They're kind of fluid. They change during the match. But I ended up making a list and then making a tournament bracket for this freaking movie, because why not? Nobody's done it. I can say, at least online, nobody's made a freaking bracket for this. They had a bracket obviously on set on the chalkboard, but they never published it. So who's the sleeper? Who's the dark horse? Who's your number one seed? How do you qualify for this tournament? How many other natives did Spotted Horse kill to get there? You know, like, is he the representative for all native people in this universe, or did he unseat some other people? Was there a playing game to get in this? A lot of unnecessary questions, unnecessary tangents you can go down. But let's just talk about the movie real quick. Holy camera zooms, Batman. I mean, this is a Raimi film. If you've never seen The Quick and the Dead and you didn't know this is a Raimi film, like, those camera zooms will let you know that this is a Raimi film. It's pretty cool. You know, I was raised on Jeremiah Johnson, Outlaw Josie Wales, The Searchers, Good, Bad, and Ugly, Dances with Wolves, and stuff like that. Like, just that whole stack of VHS tapes that just kind of just rotates through all the men in your family. Like, that's that. And I just wasn't for me. You know, they were just older than what I was, and I just didn't like it. So when stuff like Blazing Saddles, City Slickers, Quick and the Dead, even stuff like Bone Tomahawk and Ballad of Buster Scruggs, like, those are reimagining of the Western genre, and I enjoy those. And I hope to continue to talk about that, because the native representation in those is also reimagined in some ways. In some ways, it's still the same. In some ways, it's better. And in this one, it's better and still the same. And that's a very, like, non-committal answer, but it is better overall. I'll just say it's better for 1995, the representation in this. It's better. It's good. You know, I mean, there are some cringe moments. There are some unnecessary stuff, but I think it falls on your perception. I don't think this gives you a definitive representation, unfortunately. More definite than other movies. This really leaves it kind of vague of, like, how do you feel about this? It's up to you, because we're making a hyperbolic universe. This is hyperbole. All of these characters are exaggerated notions of these tropes, these recurring tropes in the Western genre, but Jonothon Gill's character, Spotted Horse, is a little different, and I'll get into it. But first, I'm going to go over the cast real quick. This cast is freaking legendary. So let's just start off with it. Sharon Stone as Lady, aka Ellen. This woman made this movie possible. No joke. She took a pay cut for this movie. She was fresh off of Basic Instinct, and she saw Russell Crowe. And he was an Australian actor, primarily an Australian actor at this point, meaning he had not done an American film. She had saw him in some of his previous work and was like, that guy needs to be in this movie. He needs to be in this movie. So she took a pay cut and said that Russell Crowe needs to be in this. And this is his first American film. And that's a big deal, and I'll talk about his work after this a little bit afterwards. And then next is future Oscar winner Leonardo DiCaprio. He's fresh off of What's Eating Gilbert Grape in this. She paid for his salary, Sharon Stone, for this movie, because she was like, he is just on fire. I just need him to be in this movie. And Sharon Stone also saw Army of Darkness and loved it. That was the Raimi film that was like, I want him to direct this film. I want him to be at the helm of this. So, hats off to Sharon Stone, because she spun this Western trope on its head. The cowboy that rides in with no name, the mysterious cowboy with no name that rides into town. For the first time that I can think of in a Western, it was a woman. And I thought that was badass, you know? Like 1995, they were like, yeah, fuck you, Western genre. Here's a woman that's going to ride into town instead of a man. I thought that was awesome. And she's just been in so many great films. I don't even want to go over it. I want to talk about the next person is, so Sharon Stone was Lady in this one. And then Gene freaking Hackman is Herod. He's an Oscar winner. He was fresh off of Unforgiven, his Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. My gosh, like, he acts his ass off in this movie. It's supposed to be a spoof, but you wouldn't know it because Gene Hackman he is so committed to this role. Like, this might be, I'd say Hoosiers is my favorite role when he's the coach in Hoosiers, and then this movie for sure. And then next we have Russell Crowe. Can you freaking believe that Maximus is in this? He killed it in this role. This led him to do some of his best work in America. After a few movies after this, he did L.A. Confidential, and he killed it in that movie. Beautiful Mind, American Gangster, even like Master and Commander was fantastic, But, Sharon Stone took a chance on him, and boom, we were graced with his presence. And then next we had Leonardo DiCaprio. He was as the kid. Russell Crowe was Court, sorry. Leo DiCaprio was Kid in this movie. I mean, Inception, Titanic, What's Eating Gilbert Grape, Growing Pains, Wolf of Wall Street, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Revenant, Django, Shutter Island, Aviator. The list goes on. I can't believe Leonardo DiCaprio is in this. When you watch it, you're just like, he is a baby in this. A baby. It's so much fun watching this movie. Tobin Bell, who is Dog Kelly. This is who Sharon Stone lady chains up to the wheel spoke at the beginning of the movie, and it's who she faces in the first round of the film. This is Jigsaw from Saw. Yeah. It's crazy, right? And then next we got Roberts Blossom, Doc Wallace. He's the doctor that can't tell if people are dead or not. Worst doctor ever. But he, escaped from Alcatraz, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Christine. He's a legendary actor that has a very long history, and it's probably disrespectful that I know him for this movie, but my most notable role is he's the snow shoveler from Home Alone. That's how I knew him from. Like, hey, it's the guy from Home Alone, the guy who shovels the salt in the movie. That's awesome. Kevin Conway, Keith David, freaking legendary as Sergeant Kentrell. Lance Hendrickson, freaking Bishop from Aliens, the android. He's Ace Hanlon. Ace Hanlon's a great character in this movie. You got the guy Ace Hanlon who is pretending to be the guy that's the pretendian. Just kidding. He's the person who pretends to be the gunslinger, steals stories from people as they die, or as he's trying to run away from the people who are actually committing these murders and robberies and kind of big bounties. He's just collecting stories and just passing them off as his own. I mean, that's a recurring Western trope right there. I love it. And then the bartender, Pat Hingle. That's Commissioner Gordon from all of the Tim Burton films, to Tim Burton's Batmans. It's freaking Commissioner Gordon there. It's awesome. He's also in a movie I'm going to do soon. He is the running coach to Billy Mills in Running Brave. Yeah. And then Gary Sinise, Lieutenant Dan. What are you doing in a Western movie? That was awful. Why did I do that? I'll work on that. And someday I'll get a Forrest Gump. But insert Forrest Gump impersonation. But Lieutenant Dan is in this. Freaking Apollo 13. I was after this. Mark Boone Jr. as Scars. He was the escaped convict in the movie. I know him mostly from Sons of Anarchy. Freaking Bobby Munson. Legendary in the Sam Crow. Sons of Anarchy. Redwood original. He was great in this. So watching this again, I'm just like, man, there's so much star power in this. And then you see Jonothon Gill. It's a shame that, like I said, this is one of his only movies I could find. He's Lakota. It sounds like he was beloved on set. Some of the research that I did online, he just was a beloved guy. Just loved being on set. After about a month, when his scenes had finished, because he's only in a few scenes in this entire movie. After his scene had finished, he had taken some time off, probably given a month, and then came back a month later and just showed up in Tucson and just hung out for a while and was just like, hey guys, how's it going, blah, blah, blah. And everyone had nothing but positive things to say about Jonothon. Sounds like he was just a sweetheart, And there was a cool story that I read about him on set, that someone on the set had died, had a heart attack, and it was in the saloon, in the movie, the set of the saloon. And he performed a ceremony on set the day after because they had halted filming completely because this person had died. And he had performed his own ceremony. It sounds like he's Lakota, I'm pretty sure. And he performed a ceremony, and everyone thought it was a heartfelt gesture, and everyone was just like, wow, blown away by it, and everyone was really moved by it. And a lot of people remembered that. And I kind of did a lot of research on this through some guy was an extra on this movie, and he dedicated a website just to this show or movie. Sorry, just to this movie. Poured his heart into it. Gave so much background on all the characters. Did a lot of research for me. So appreciate the quickandthedead.net. If you can find it, good luck. It's pretty hard to find, but if you can find it, there's a lot of great old information there. It's pretty cool. Let's get into the plot review. So I'm trying to go through this kind of quick, but also, give this movie its due. This movie's set in 1881, opens with the lady riding into town with no name, Sharon Stone. She gets into a shootout with Jigsaw right at the beginning, and she fakes her death on her horse, kind of alluding to the fact that that's her fighting style is deceit. Falls off her horse, gets up, and eventually, knocks this guy out cold, chains him to a wheel spoke, and rides into town. It's cool because, like I said, she's the cowboy with no name. For the first time, it's a woman that I can remember. It's always a man. Women are always just objects. They're always sought after in these westerns. And instead, she's now the Lone Ranger. She doesn't need anybody to protect her other than her gun. And I thought that was badass. And rides into redemption, this town that's run by Gene Hackman, a.k.a. John Herod. Herod is just like an evil ex-outlaw who just decided to just take over a town. And it's said multiple times, maybe throughout the film, he gets 50 cents for every dollar in this town. And what does the town get? It gets to live. God, this movie's gold. Yeah, it's just great. The entire town hates this guy. Even the villains, they're just like, ugh. I mean, the villains like it to a certain extent because this time of the year, if you enter this tournament, everything's covered. Your room, your board, you can have whatever you want, whatever woman you want, whatever alcohol you want, whatever room, food, it's all in the house if you're going to enter this tournament. And that's stated multiple times throughout the movie. And we learn that this massive jackpot, this title of being the winner of the quick draw competition, it's all just a way for Herod to get all of his enemies to come to him. It's really very, very video game like. It's just for all of them to come to him and kill each other. So, and then he can eventually kill the person who's the last man standing, and all of his work's done for him. He don't have to go be an outlaw and travel all across the Southwest anymore. He can just set up this annual tournament and rest on his laurels, wait for them to come to him and kill him. It's pretty awesome. But yeah. So then we get introduced to Lance Hendrickson, Ace Hanlon's character. And this is if you don't notice the hyperbole when Lance Hendrickson's character gets in, I can't help you. Lance Hendrickson comes in wearing just 100% leather, to begin with. He looks like a freaking biker. But when you look at his clothes, he's in, everything is embroidered with aces, with the ace symbol. And it is ridiculous looking. And his whole gimmick is and add an ace to the deck for every man that I kill. And he does this splay of all the cards, and it's a stupid amount of cards with a bunch of aces in there. And that's kind of his ooh and ah of oh man, don't mess with this guy, don't fuck with this guy mean business. It's pretty cool though. I mean, it's great to see Lance Hendrickson, freaking the android from the Aliens. But then, we're introduced to Scars, Mark Boone Jr. from Sons of Anarchy. Escaped convict, comes from prison, just came out of prison all the way just to enter the tournament. Perfect, makes perfect sense. Kills a dude as soon as he gets into town, and then, once again, another Western thing, memorializes the kill as soon as he gets to town by rolling up his sleeves and cutting a, slice into his arm. Taking trophy in his, memorializing a trophy on his body kind of thing. And so what's interesting is, so that's just as soon as Lady rides into town. All of this happens so quick. And then Lady's like, all right, I need a room. And the bartender, Commissioner Gordon, he's like, nah, whores are next door. After he realizes he's talking to a lady. The whorehouse is next door, lady. And she just schools him and owns him and is like, give me a fucking room, you asshole. I'm here for the competition. And I love it. She schools him and puts him in his place. And so she eventually goes to her room later that day, And I don't know what the heck happened here. Apparently, this is a piece of the movie that didn't make it, but this is like Dia de los Muertos. It's just not explained. You can kind of piece it together, but this is like the massive festival that kicks off the tournament. The Day of the Dead is the time of the year when people know to show up to this town to sign up for the tournament so they can start the next day. And in this scene, there was some heavy native representation that was cut. So on the representation piece, between Dredd and Kid, so that's who Leo DiCaprio challenges during the sign up, and those two, they meet. So during this festival, there's supposed to be a bunch of games, like knife throwing and gunslinging, kind of like these carnival games. But they had this one thing. I can't remember. It was called an Indian bar game. No. I was mistaken. Indian Bob's Shooting Gallery. And it's just basically like this old school, like lever game where you just pull a lever and like 6 tin Indian figurines pop up, and you got to use your pistol and use your 6-shooter and shoot them all down. And the script was just like, wow, yikes. It's supposed to have a lady walking through like she does at the beginning of the movie, walking down this alleyway, checking out all the festivities. And there's supposed to be a native guy, standing there like 3 out of 6, not bad. Who's up next? Who's up next? Come on over and kill those savage Injuns, like verbatim. Let's see how you can handle your gun. What about you, sir? Can you knock down these Injuns? What about you, sir? Can you handle these 10 Injuns? And it's just like, yikes, man. But there's supposed to be a scene in this that was cut out where Jonothon Gill spotted horse. This carney's supposed to be making these like, hey, what about you, sir? Oh, come on, sweetheart. Why don't you come over here and wield this gun? See if you can knock down these Injuns, And he kind of is like doing his pitch. And then eventually he gets like bumps into a guy. And Jonothon Gill in this movie, Spotted Horse, is supposed to be 6'5", this massive native guy. And he's supposed to turn around and bump into him, who's ready to kill these... And then supposed to stop and like look slowly and pan up and see this massive native guy standing over him. And I'm like, man, that sounds like it would have been a cool scene to see. I wish they kept that in there. But I probably cut it because the dialogue in this is pretty bad. It's pretty bad from what I saw, and this is all from somebody's memory too. This isn't like actual script that was pulled, so I didn't actually get to see, but it's like a lot of like Indian savage talk about, and with no natives represented. They're just shooting tin natives basically. But this all leads up eventually to them going into the bar for the sign up. So they get in there, and even this, let me just talk about this real quick. It's very stereotypical, this festival. There's a lot of arriba, sombreros galore, mariachis all over the place. Where are these people of color? Like, you hardly ever see anybody that's a person of color in this movie. And they have their faces, they're supposed to have their faces painted on like it's like what you see during Dia de los Muertos. It honestly looks more like Johnny Lawrence from Karate Kid than like what you see in Dia de los Muertos. That's why I wasn't sure what this was. Had I not found that the research, the explaining what this is supposed to, like setting the scene, explaining what it's supposed to be, I wouldn't have known. There's a random scene where people are like, almost like they're holding up signs, but they have a bunch of piñatas on them. I don't know. And people just have these random masks on. They don't really seem to have relevance. It's just, it shows, kind of the lazy aspects of like the representation. They were just like, yeah, that looks fun, The only indication I knew that it was Dia de los Muertos is somebody runs in front of the camera and says, Que viven los muertos. And I Google it, don't be impressed that I know what that means. I Google it, and it translates to Long Live the Dead. And so that's when I was like, well, I guess that's a Day of the Dead celebration. And then it was confirmed by that website. So regardless of whatever happened there or didn't happen, flash to the bar. This is where the tournament signs up. So this is where we get the first time we actually see Spotted Horse on camera. Because the bartender yells, I now declare the quick draw competition open. Commissioner Gordon. And then each man who enters the contest will fight once a day. So here's the rules. Anybody can challenge anybody, as long as you advance to the next round. The time of the fight will be pulled from a hat. During the duration of the contest, every fighter is entitled to whatever he wants, courtesy of Mr. Herod. It goes, but the man who wins this contest gets this. And then Commissioner Gordon flips the thing open. A massive Wells Fargo chest is opened with $123,000. And everyone's like, ooh. All right, so your boy is in business school, so I had to do this. This movie is set in 1881. $123,000 adjusted for inflation. Yeah, I actually did this. Is a whopping $3.2 million. I mean, that's a lot of money. For any age. So you're basically telling these people you can become a millionaire if you come and win this competition. So this was a lot of coin for them. And it makes sense. That's what Herod wanted all these people to come to freaking try to take him down and win this money. So I think what's interesting is when the signups begin, and as the movie progresses, everyone has a backstory except for Spotted Horse, at least that make it to the second round, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But in this one, some people's requests to sign up are given some screen time, and others are like in the background while dialogue is happening. Signups begin. Commissioner Gordon, the bartender, gets up to the chalkboard. Swedish champion, first guy. He's like, oh yeah, I'll sign up. Starts peacocking. Ace Hanlon signs up. Based on those two, we know they're going to die. Because of how quick their requests were. And then we're introduced to the kid, a.k.a. John Herod's son. And he carries that secret throughout this movie. And then Keith David. And this has to be my favorite scene in this part of the movie, or this line in the movie. The bartender, anyone else? And then from the top second floor, Sergeant Kentrell. How do you spell that? And then he takes an unnecessarily long draw from his pipe and he just says, correctly. What a boss, man. If you haven't figured out by now, stuff like that, it's hyperbole. This movie's like a spoof, but it's not a spoof like Blazing Saddles. It's not that on the nose, but man, it's awesome. So right after this awesome scene with Keith Cantrell, Sergeant Cantrell, Keith David, is our boy. And the bartender says, anyone else? And then Spotted Horse, many white men will leave this town in wooden boxes. And then it moves on to the next person. So we already know, based on how quick his introduction was, he's not going to last long. There's nothing but white people in this movie. He won't take out many of them, if any. And then also, this is his only line of dialogue in this. He has Indian speak throughout this movie. No idea where he's from. We have no idea how he found out about the tournament. All these other people have these there's a legendary tournament. I want to come and beat Herod. I want to be the man that beats Herod. I came to town because I'm just a man looking for adventure. I came to town because I want that coin. I came to town because I want a challenge. But Spotted Horse is just, a lot of you white people are going to leave in boxes after I'm done with you. But in Indian speak, So it's kind of like, it's progress, but it's not, But he makes it past the first round. I'll talk about that in a little bit. And then Herod comes in, takes a tally who's enters. He adds his name to the list. Russell Crowe gets added to the list. Lady finds her way in. Blah, 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 blah. So then we go. That night, everyone parties hard. And then the next day, Lady ends up, staying at the kid's house, Leonardo DiCaprio, because he was trying to hit on her unsuccessfully. But then she just crashes at his place. And she's like, your bed's fucking terrible, man. What the hell is this? And he's like, well, why don't you check it out? And she pulls up the sheet where she was sleeping on. He's got barrels of dynamite for a bed frame. I mean, such a Western thing. I love it. Such a cartoonish Western thing. But yeah, it was great. So they wake up to the day of the competition starting. And this is where we get... So there's 16 people in this tournament. And at this point, Ace Hanlon has not fought anyone. Ace Hanlon is just all talk up to this point. He's kind of a circus performer. Lance Hendrickson, he is just like blowing himself up of like, oh yeah, I'm a great this. I killed this person. You know, you heard of those 2 bandits dying? Yeah, you're looking at the guy who did it. And then Herod calls him out. He's like, I want you, you know, later on, obviously. And so these 16 people that get challenged, or 16 people that add their name to the hat, they're not initially seated. They have to get challenged, or you'll get seated, or you'll get matched up, rather. Sorry, you'll get matched up with somebody. So Court gets challenged, Russell Crowe, and then everyone gets put in place. And then this random montage happens, and this is the only time we see Spotted Horse win. This is why I bring this up. There's this really quick scene with Kid and the Swedish champion. He gets matched up against him, and they're the first fight that kicks off this entire tournament in the first round. And Kid takes him out. This is before the fight to the death rules are instituted. It's just whoever can knock the person down across from you wins. And after this match is over, you know, Kid's like, "Ooh, I'm so fast. You know, he's got this little Muhammad Ali kind of stuff. Oh, I'm so fast. And everyone's like, "Oh, Kid, you're going to win this thing." And then this quick montage happens, and we see our boy Spotted Horse again. He wins. And he advances to the second round. And then in the next scene, this is like the second to the last scene that we see of Spotted Horse. And it's pretty cool because it's more than just the lines of dialogue. I mean, he basically rips his chest over, rips his shirt apart, exposes his bare chest. And for no reason, standing on the table, I don't think he's prompted by anybody to do this. The scene just opens up and he just, "Spotted Horse cannot be killed by a bullet. See?" Rips his shirt open. "I've taken 4 bullets in my arm, 3 in my leg, 1 in my right, and 2 bullets in the back. Another bullet went through my lip. Another bullet went through my left foot. And another bullet went through my head today, here. And it has not even come out yet. And nobody's paying attention to him. He's just jawing like a bad stand-up set. He's just bombing. You know, nobody's listening to him. I don't understand that comment when the line when he was like, "Another bullet went through my foot. And another bullet went through my head today, here. And it has not even come out yet." Is he like mentally ill, or is he lying? Is he going crazy? Is he trying to be clever? You know, like, I don't really understand that. What the hell does that mean? And then the lady, like, flashes to her because she's in the bar, too. Like, it's just a scene just to set up, like, ladies there. Sharon Stone. And she's, like, watching Gene Hackman from afar in the bar. But in her gaze, as she's watching Gene Hackman across the bar, you see Spotted Horse sitting down in a chair. He's playing poker. He's drinking with a group. It looks like there's another native sitting at the table, which I never noticed before. And he has long hair too. He's got, you know, no braids. He just has a hat on, but you can just tell he looks native, you know, by the way he's dressed, by the way he looks. What I liked about that, and this is real subtle, so it may not even count as positive representation, but neither of them are drunken Indians. They're just sitting down playing poker with some non-native people. They're just having a good time. They're just existing in the world. That's what we do. Yeah, he had this like moment where he pontificated and talked about all the bullet wounds he has and how he can't be killed by a bullet and how he's going to kill a bunch of white people by the time this competition's over. But he was just existing in the world, and I really appreciated that about Spotted Horse. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And he eventually sees his demise because he faces Court. But I'll go ahead and go over the first round of the bracket. So it's Spotted Horse versus Montoya. Spotted Horse wins. Simp versus Dread. Dread wins. Kentrell versus Sparks. Kentrell wins. Red v Scars. Scars wins. Court advances. Kid, Lady, Herod. So let's breeze through that. Round 2. So we have Herod versus Kentrell. And this is important because Herod finds out that Kentrell is a bounty hunter. Kentrell, Keith David, was hired by the town because the town's like, we're getting taxed the shit out of with Herod at the helm. We need to get this guy out of here. So they scrounge up some money and hire this bounty hunter, Kentrell, and he's a hired gunslinger. He comes in to try to take him out. Herod's wise to his game, but he's also the best in town outside of Court and just takes him out. And then Kid versus Scars, Scars being, Bobby Munson, Sons of Anarchy. Kid takes him out And yeah, just takes him out. There isn't a whole lot going on with that one. It's just a great scene. And then Lady faces off against Dread. She takes him out. That was pretty awesome. It turns into like a scene where they're just like fighting in the mud, basically. Because the round 2, this is the first round where it's fight to the death. You know, Herod calls an audible on the rules, and he's like, it's no longer last man standing. You got to kill your opponent. And then that's why Court versus Spotted Horse is significant. So Court, Russell Crowe, is a reverend in this movie. At least seemingly. We learn that he used to run with Herod when Herod was a traveling outlaw. And he was under his tutelage to be his next man up, to be the next person, the next Herod. And they went and ended up in some Mexican town, and he got pretty cordial with a priest, Court. You know, hung out with a priest, and toward the end of the day, they were like, man, I'm becoming pretty good friends with this priest. And Herod was like, all right, we're taking this town. I want you to shoot that priest, Court. And Court refuses to. And Court gets a gun put on him by Herod. And he's like, I'm going to give you to the count of 10 to shoot the priest, or I'm going to shoot you. And before the countdown ends, he shoots the priest. And so after that, he swears, like John Wick status. I swear to a life of no violence now. You know, that just ruined me. And so during this, leading up to the competition, Court doesn't want to fight. But of course, you know, the killer instinct in him comes out. The need to survive comes out. And he's only given 1 bullet per match. And now that the rules have changed, it's now you have to kill your opponent. It's a little different. Because Spotted Horse can't be killed by a bullet. Supposedly. That's the story he's touting this entire movie. And Court, when he starts, they're facing off from each other. And then the clock strikes the hour, and they shoot. Court hits Spotted Horse. Spotted Horse goes down. And they're like, the worst doctor in the world comes over, Shelter from Home Alone. He's dead. Court is the champion. And then he does this move where it's like Shredder and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, and he's just like, his hand just shoots back up. He stands back up, and Court's like, I need a bullet. And so there's this great climate, you know, great scene, great suspenseful scene where you're just like, what's going to happen? And, you know, Court is trying to find another bullet for his gun, and Spotted Horse is like just firing all over the place, trying to gather himself, you know, holding his gunshot wound over his chest and just trying to shoot this guy. Eventually, Court gets another bullet, takes him out, you know, puts one between his eyes, and it's over. And that's pretty much it. That's the last that we see of Spotted Horse. But what I think is cool about that scene is Spotted Horse was this scene is loved by people. When you go on YouTube, of all the scenes in The Quick and the Dead, this is the one that has the most views in terms of like the gunslinger movie, the gunslinger scenes. I thought that was pretty cool, you know. I think that's something to be happy about because, you know, the native, yes, he still did die like natives do in these movies, in the westerns, but it wasn't in the same way, you know. He did something that I don't agree with. Right before the match was about to start, you see him applying some war paint to his head, to his face, only one cheek. I don't know if that's accurate. I don't know the significance of that, because he's Lakota, and he actually is Lakota, and he's representing someone who is seemingly Lakota on the film, on the movie. Maybe that's what you do. But won't that make your grip sticky? Shouldn't you not apply war paint right as you're about to draw your gun? But anyway, it was good. It was good, you know. I think that the movie, unfortunately, once again, it doesn't matter how you portray someone, it matters how it's received. On YouTube, there's some ignorant-ass comments. I mean, I expected, you know, firewater comments and blah, blah, blah about his Indian speak of like, oh, you know, if he did a little less talking and more shooting, maybe this Injun would have won, you know. Oh, those savages got what they deserved kind of thing. It wasn't as bad, though. They were more jokes about like, well, I guess he really could be killed by a bullet. It looks like he was shot 18 times. You didn't say he couldn't be killed by 19 bullets. I guess you shoot someone in the head. That's doesn't matter, kind of thing. It wasn't as bad as like Shep Proudfoot and Fargo, which came out a year later after this movie. Yeah, I thought it was good. I thought it was pretty awesome. It's a good movie. So then, final four: Lady versus Court, Herod versus Kid, Father versus Son. Sharon Stone versus Russell Crowe, Gene Hackman versus Leonardo DiCaprio. I mean, what universe are we living in where that final four is happening? But I'll blaze through the end of this because Spotted Horse is not in the rest of this movie. But really, Lady versus Court, they don't want to fight each other. Court takes out Lady, she fakes her death. They don't find out until after Herod kills Kid and, kind of like doesn't acknowledge him as his son. That's kind of like the big payoff. Then we have Court v. Herod. Lady comes storming in, blows up the entire town using the dynamite that Kid had been sleeping on throughout the entire movie. And then the last scene I thought was cool. She shoots him once in the chest. And there's a shadow cast through that bullet hole, which isn't realistic, but I loved it. And then finishes him off with a headshot that only can be replicated in Halo 2. If you've ever played Halo 2, this is a very specific reference. If you've ever played snipers in Halo 2 and you shot somebody in the head and they would go flying and their feet would just kiss the sky, like there's no other way I can describe it other than that. Gene Hackman does this freaking Halo 2 headshot kind of body fly. Like, it is insane the amount of just lift he gets from being shot in the face. But I was here for it. It was awesome. They peppered in hyperbole at perfect times in this movie, and I loved it. I loved it. The movie ends with Lady giving her dad's marshal badge to Court. And that's something I kind of grazed over, is Lady had a grudge with Herod because Lieutenant Dan is her father, and he killed her by causing, really by saying, like, here, if you don't want your daddy hung, why don't you shoot that rope that he's hanging from in time? If you can do it, he lives. And she ends up missing and shooting him right in the forehead. And so she held a grudge against this guy her entire life. For good reason, But yeah, the movie's over at that point. Court is now the new Herod, but he is now the marshal. He's not the outlaw anymore. She's like, you run this town with some justice. It was good. And that was the end of the movie. Positives, this was progress for the time. There was no wig. This looked like it was his real hair. This looked like Jonothon Gill's real hair. There was no bandana. That's usually a dead giveaway. If they're wearing a bandana, it's usually what I learned is bandanas were used to just keep their head on their head, or the hair on their head. So there was no bandana. I did a co-interview with Sterling Harjo. It was about his TV show Reservation Dogs. But when we brought up, he said something once in an interview, and I asked him about it, and he said, I refuse to do movies and stories about dead Indians. And I asked him what that was about. And he really just said that period pieces come from a place where natives, like Indians, are the zombie films in Westerns. And are the zombies in Westerns. And it took me a while to process what he meant by that, because he's like, we were meant to die. And I'm just like, what does that mean? But in zombie films, really, like, the whole point of a zombie is to get killed by the humans, to get killed by the protagonists. And that's who natives were in Westerns. Natives were there really to be in the way, to just be in the way for something cool to happen. They were in the way of the main characters, the humans, doing something toward capturing their goal. And the positives were, it wasn't like that in this movie. Yes, he was a zombie in the sense that he did ultimately die, but he didn't die right away. He made it to the second round. He was killed by Russell fucking Crowe. He wasn't killed by no-name actor. He wasn't killed, off camera. He had a cool death for 1995. He died like a juggernaut. And it's something that needs attention. needed multiple attempts to go down. Doesn't go down easy. He's memorable. While he didn't have a backstory like the rest of the characters, it was a memorable death. I liked it, and I thought it was just badass. When I was a kid, when I saw this came out when I was 7, but I didn't see it until I was probably 10 or 11 years old. And when I saw this, I'm just like, whoa, that's an Indian, that's native, My uncle showed it to me, and I'm like, oh, Reg, that's a native, isn't it? And he just like laughed at me. He's like, yeah, that is. And I just thought that was cool. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. I didn't think of it as like representation or anything. I'm like, that's awesome. That's a native. I believe it was progress. It was a maturation point, I think, And this movie's just a fun movie overall. I mean, I'm about to talk about the negatives. Spotted Horse is the only person in this movie that talks in the third person. That's just a bad thing that always happened, and it's a villain thing, but it's also just a poor representation of natives. It's like in Last of the Mohicans. My only dig I have on Magua is he always speaks in the third person, even in his own language. And in this movie, Spotted Horse is always speaking in the third person. I just don't like that, We can't make up our mind on what he is. Is he the Legend of Geronimo? Is he some random spoof of something else? I don't know. But I feel like they just kind of threw him in there. And why a native? If you're making a spoof of Westerns, you didn't have to put a native in here. It makes no sense to put him in there. Why is he in here? You give him no depth. You give him seemingly no depth. You don't give him depth the same way that the other characters have depth. Everyone has backstories. People come from prison. People are coming for money. They're coming for fame. They're coming to take out Herod. Spotted Horse shows up. He has no motives explained. Is he in it for the money? Is he in it to take out Herod? Is he coming for something? Is he going to give the money to his family? What is he going to try to buy back his land? What is he going to do with the money? We have no fucking idea. He doesn't know anybody in this town. Everybody else has a prior relationship or at least a grudge with somebody else in this town. Spotted Horse is just there as a prop. He's just there as a, no white man can kill me with a bullet. No bullet can kill Spotted Horse. That's it, It was Lakota. It looks like the hairstyle was like Lakota plains. He had sterling silver, which is like more from like the Southwest, which was odd. And he had like random beaded shit. Like beaded pouches, beaded cufflinks. He had like leather frills on his wrists for whatever reason. I don't know. It looked like they went to like a random native gift shop like on the side of the road while they were driving to Tucson. Imagine them like driving from LA to Tucson. They probably just saw like a roadside stand. They were like, yeah, let's stop there. And they just probably bought all the stuff for him at that store. That's what his costume looks like. So the costume wasn't a good thing. He can speak English, but he didn't speak his native language. I wish he would have, and that's a lot to ask for in 1995 in a movie that's not about him. But there was no reason to put him in here. No reason. He isn't very intelligent. He doesn't offer anything other than being in the way. He offers an opportunity for Russell Crowe to show how badass he is. It's a great scene. People love this scene. I think the main thing, though, is he has no dialogue with anyone. He only talks at people. Nobody ever acknowledges him by having a dialogue with him. He's a one-dimensional character and really just a showpiece. So, I don't know. But I will say, man, he was, I don't know, he was in the scene with Russell Crowe, Maximus. It's pretty awesome, ultimately. I will say, final thoughts about this. The ignorance on YouTube is it's not as bad. It's still bad for this one, but Google this scene. Look up Herod. I almost said Herod. Look up Court versus Spotted Horse, The Quick and the Dead. People love this scene. It's crazy how many people love this scene, more so than other scenes in this awesome movie. But some of the comments are ignorant, some of them aren't. But overall, it's like that's where you see the progress, is how people receive this. Most people critique his words, his lines, and they're like, well, I guess he really could be killed by a bullet. And there's very few people, it's much less than other things that I've seen where it's like ignorant comments. They're just like, man, this is a badass scene. People are just happy about it. And that's kind of what I want to see more of in terms of representation, that we're just there. We just exist in the world. And for a period piece, I think this was all right. It was all right. There were no firewater comments in this movie. He wasn't an alcoholic. He wasn't a savage. He wasn't a rapist, which is usually what these, he wasn't a kidnapper. That's usually what these Westerns were. And I loved it. It was pretty cool. While it was hyperbolic, he had a chance to be alongside these this is like a Hall of Fame cast. I think I love that part. Russell Crowe, Gene Hackman, Sharon Stone, Leonardo DiCaprio, Lance Hendrickson, Keith David. The list goes on. I mean, it is insane, the star power in this. And you have a native in here. It's fun. Enjoy this. It's a great movie. If you haven't seen The Quick and the Dead, go watch it. Just go. Did you go yet? Go. It's a great movie. If it's been a long time since you've seen it, completely encourage you to go rewatch it. This is great. So I skipped a few movies with this sign off, but will I show this to my son? Probably I'll show it to him. I think there's out of all the movies I could show him, The Quick and the Dead doesn't jump out as me as like, oh God, son, this is one you gotta see. Out of all the Raimi films, I'm gonna show him Spider-Man before this one, or Evil Dead before this one probably. But I think it's cool for him to see. I wouldn't show it specifically to him for like the native representation, but I'm just like, hey, you want to see a cool Western? Here's a cool freaking Western. Let's watch it. All right, everybody. Talk to you later.